You, George, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. Are you still in the UK or are you somewhere in the States right now?
I'm in London right now. It's a beautiful spring day. It's windy, but it's warm.
Oh, that's fantastic. I knew it was you calling because the phone number that popped up had like 15 numbers in it, which is about 10 times more than we have here in the States. So, how's life treating you these days?
Really good. You know, I'm in London preparing for an art show in Denmark in June, and then I'm heading out to tour in America, and lots of gigging this year, lots of creative stuff. So things are really good.
I learned something new today when I was looking into your career and, of course, the band's career, that you were actually briefly a part of Bow Wow Wow, and then you and most of the band left and made Culture Club. I didn't know that before.
Yeah, it was a very quick experience in Bow Wow Wow, but it gave me a taste for being in a band. It was like, that was the sort of dynamite that kicked it all off. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I'm kind of grateful for that experience, because I wouldn't really have done what I've done really without that moment, I don't think.
Well, and looking back on the 80s when Culture Club finally broke, I mean, it was a decade of trends and fads. And when Culture Club got huge, especially in America, everybody was about copying their musical hero styles. And copying Boy George's style and dress was just as popular as Madonna's. What was it like back then seeing people dressing just like you at your shows?
I liked it. I was influenced by David Bowie and Mark Bolan from T-Rex and all the kind of, dandies that I grew up with in the 70s. So it was a continuation of what those sort of artists taught me, and, about freedom of expression. And rock and roll is not really a place for dressing down.
That's very true, and you're proof of that. And even to this day, you're out there sort of pushing the envelope and trying new things. What kind of, in your head, makes you go, you know what, I want to try that. I want to try this purple top hat with a rakish tilt and then, put a beautiful art and glitter around my eye. What makes you go, I want to look like that for right now?
I think that, there's certain aesthetics that please me. I love a hat because I think a hat it adds a sort of, height and, tension to a look. And, it's really just, I like classic kind of cuts, classic tailoring, but with a twist. I love clothes, but I don't really care about them in the way some people do. Do you know what I mean? To me, they're a means to an end. It's about having fun. It's about expressing yourself. But I'm also a big champion of normality as well. Whatever turns you on, do it. Enjoy yourself. Life is short and brief, and you should make it as fun as possible.
And that's what I love about you, is because I'm the same way. If you like it, do it. If you're not hurting anybody else, who cares? Just go out and have fun and live your own life and be as pretty or dressed down as you want.
Yeah, exactly. Because, as I say, if you're in someone else's experience, you're not having your own experience, and that's worrying.
Yeah, very much so. It must have been an experience when you sort of had a resurgence with your solo career and really blew up when you ended up doing The Crying Game. And so I wanted to know, when you did the remake of the song The Crying Game, did you know about the movie, or would they just approach you about doing a song?
I knew it was for the movie, and I also knew the lead actor, Jay Davidson. I knew him well, so the surprise didn't necessarily work on me the way it did a lot of people, because obviously I knew Jay, so I knew that he was the guy, so I had his head sort of upstart in a way, but I didn't really know much about the film when I recorded the song. I just loved the song. I liked the idea of working with the Pet Shop Boys. That was sort of something that I thought was really fun. And I think, we got a really good record out of it. So it was really everything about it was great. There was no complaint.
Yeah, you can really hear Neil Tennant's when he's doing the harmonies with you're singing his voice in there. It really adds that really cool layer, because I've always loved the Pet Shop Boys vocal harmonies.
Yeah, no, me too. I've always liked their songs as well. I think they write great songs.
So you knew the actor Jay, who was going into The Crying Game, who was portraying a woman. So you essentially knew sort of the twist ending, but not completely. How hard was it to keep that secret when everybody was like, it was the biggest spoiler in the world, for movies for a while?
No, I was very well behaved. I didn't tell anybody. I kept my mouth shut, and I allowed it to happen. And it was great because I was in the cinema at the premiere, and the whole audience was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Really?" Come on, guys.
I just see you sort of chuckling under your breath throughout the whole film.
Yeah, but I thought it was a great film. I mean, if you think about when it was made, I mean, it felt like it was radical then, but it's still kind of radical now in a way.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that earlier when I was coming up with questions to ask you that it's kind of cool and yet also kind of telling that your look from the 80s these days would still be looked at, by some people as what is he wearing? And it's like, just why does that even matter? Why is it so radical to have these, to let people be people?
Well, it's only, as I say, it's clothing. It's really the deeds of the man or the woman are what really matter. What you actually do in your life day to day, how you treat people, how you operate, I think is far more interesting than what you look like. Because equally, you can look at someone who isn't really dressed up, who looks kind of boring, and they can be the most interesting person in the room in terms of what they've experienced and what they know about the world. So I think we're all very careless when we judge anyone by what they look like, because we're always wrong. We never get it right.
I love that. We're always wrong. That's a great way to look at it because it's so true. We are always wrong if you try to judge somebody just on their outward appearance.
And sometimes, there are people you love. I mean, one of the things about being a Gemini is I can dislike a person but also like what they do, which is quite weird. So people say, we are two-faced. I say, no, I'm just able to separate the craft from the person. If I love the music, of course, it always helps if you love the person as well. It makes it even better. But actually, there are some artists that I don't particularly like. I'm not going to name them. But I think I love your music, so I just, I will enjoy the song and separate you from it,
I'm a Pisces, and I don't know that much about my own horoscope if we're just accepting of people, but I like to think that I'm accepting of people just as they are, so maybe that's part of the Pisces thing.
Yeah, well, Pisces is like quite a spiritual, quite a creative sign, quite sensitive. So, when you're sensitive, it makes you more kind of conscious of what other people are feeling. But also, as we just said, you really never know what someone's feeling. And even sometimes when people tell you what they're feeling, they're not necessarily telling you the truth.
Yeah.
You kind of, you're never really sure. I feel like just keep an open mind on everything and everyone. And as I say, I think whenever I travel, of course, I love architecture and I love memorabilia and all of that stuff and the food. But what you remember is the people. You always remember how you were treated when you arrived. And I actually think if you arrive smiling, you'll always have a better time.
Have you ever sort of felt like people were just treating you well because you were Boy George, the singer and celebrity, but maybe deep down they wouldn't have if you weren't a famous musician?
The best thing ever is when you talk to someone on the phone and they're very unfriendly and cold, and then it quickly transpires that you're Boy George on the phone. Oh, my God, sometimes the turnaround is almost comical. You just think, who were you a minute ago? Now you're being so nice. But I think, as I say, you have to evolve with the person. You have to enjoy it, particularly in my game. You have to enjoy being who you are. Otherwise, everything's a nightmare. When you're walking around and people come up to you, you kind of have to deal with it and be nice and enjoy it. I feel like that's the difference between me now and 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I really didn't understand what it meant to actually have fun doing everything. Everything is fun. The rehearsal, the getting ready, the show after the show. It's all great. There's never a kind of moment where I feel the same sort of anxiety that I used to feel 30 years ago. I just won't do it.
Did you have any anxiety? I did a little club DJing way back in the day myself, like mid to late 90s. And there's a little bit of an anxiety being that close to people you're performing for. You had been on stage with sort of a separation with, 20,000 fans. When you first started club DJing, did you have any anxiety with that being that intimate?
No, I really enjoy DJing. I think it's very similar to live performing with a band, except, you're playing other people's music. I mean, sometimes I play my own music, but as a rule, I think just having that role of entertainer, whether it's on stage with a microphone or behind the deck, I really enjoy that. I suppose I'm a bit of a voyeur. I like to be at the party, but not in the party. So being a DJ is a perfect way to be right in the mix, have the music really loud in the DJ box, but you've got this little barrier, which I do like.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I like sort of kind of running the party, but I don't want to be down in the middle of it all.
Exactly.
So what's next for you? Obviously, you're working on the tour. You said you have an art expo. Have you been painting or doing art other than music for quite a while now?
Yeah, I mean, I used to do it at school. It was the only thing I ever really got good grades for. Was actually weirdly art and religious education. It was a conversation. I know, but it was. Well, I've always been really interested in faith, actually, and especially at school, I used to really enjoy the conversations about it. And I still enjoy that. I think you have to be careful not to offend anybody, but I think it's interesting to hear what people feel about spiritual things and life and the meaning of life. I find that very fascinating, more than fashion.
I love the two things that you got good grades in. That is just such a duality, a dichotomy in my head. But it makes sense.
It goes back to what we just said. It's like what you engage with. It's got nothing to do with how you look or your gender or your sexuality or your race or any of those things. We're all unique individual beings.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to call in. Cannot wait for the tour to roll through. Big fan of all the bands, especially love me some Howard Jones. But of course, I love Culture Club and your music and your solo stuff. And thank you so much for calling in, especially all the way from across the pond, my friend.
All right. See you at the gig, man. Thanks a lot.